Hi, everybody. Dan Ullman, Mike Beer, taking a look at the DRF race of the day for Friday, May the 3rd. It's race number 11 at Churchill Downs, the Grade 1 Kentucky Oaks. Some of the best three-year-old fillies in the land getting set to go a mile and an eighth. Let's take a look at this overflow field. We've got 14 in the body of the Kentucky Oaks, 2 on the also eligible list. And Mike, this race is so wide open and so competitive. The 2 horses that didn't make it into the race, Our Pretty Woman, graded stakes place, Candied, 3rd in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies, and a Grade 1 winner. If they were in this race, they'd be main contenders.
Yeah, they would. Absolutely. That's how strong this field is. It's kind of surprising to see those 2 horses, especially Candide, stuck on the AE list, not able to make the field. Overall, it feels like there's a ton of quality in here, Dan. My favorite thing about this race is a bunch of these fillies were good as 2-year-olds, and then you're always waiting to see how much they progress at 3. Most of them have gotten better so far as 3-year-olds.
That's a great point, and that leaves us excited to see and wanting more. Let's take a look at the Time Form US Pace Projector. We're expecting some speed, and Into Champagne showed speed last time out in the Gulfstream Park Oaks. The good thing about Into Champagne, I don't think she's a speed crazy type. Personally, I don't think she's going to make the lead. I think Fiona's Magic, the number 7, is going to get to the front. Whether she's good enough to wire this quality group is a different story. I think she'll face a little pressure from Into Champagne, Where's My Ring, and the newly blinkers off regulatory risk. But I think Fiona's Magic's the pace.
Yeah, I thought that she would be the pace too, mostly because I just feel like there's really no other way that she can win here, Dan. I think they just have to take their chances on the lead with Fiona's Magic. Into Champagne to me is more tackle. I know she wound up on the lead in her most recent start, but she doesn't have to be ridden that way. I think Where's the Ring has a real chance to be on the lead in this race. They didn't go last time, and she said a perfect trip, but she's inside here, and she's got plenty of speed if they want to use it.
The weather forecast still uncertain at Churchill Downs on the big days, Friday and Saturday. If it does rain and the track comes up wet, you might want to upgrade the number 1, Tapit Janali, who won a stakes race over a sloppy track at Delta Downs last year as a 2-year-old. Now, she has campaigned at Oaklawn Park over the winter, and she's finished behind a couple of these, but I thought she ran some sneaky good efforts in both the Honeybee and the Fantasy, Mike. A little bit slow on paper, but if this pace does heat up and she gets a trip, maybe we'll see a kick at a giant price.
Yeah, against this kind of a field, she's really going to have to move forward. And I don't disagree with your take on her recent races. They're not terrible, but she just has to run way better than that. I mean, 2 back, she sort of completed that long shot exacta with Lemon Muffin, and she was only second best that day. And overall, Dan, the Fantasy last time, I loved the ride that she got. She just followed the 1-2 finishers around there and took her shot, and she wasn't good enough.
Bradcock says the morning line favorite in this race in Tarifa. He's also going to be sending out Jin Jin, the winner of the Busanda, 3 starts back at Aqueduct, at this mile and an eighth distance over a wet track. She's just not fast. She's run 7 times. Her career buyer's only a 76. She was no match for Where's My Ring last time out. She's just going to have to really put it all together, Mike. She's been campaigning in New York over the winter in the lead up to the Kentucky Oaks, and I just didn't think that was the strongest group of 3-year-old fillies this year.
I won't disagree with that. She's another horse who just has to get a lot better. This is a really tough spot for her. I appreciate that she is a stakes winner over 9 furlongs in around 2 turns, but that wasn't my favorite race as far as the field is concerned that day. She just sort of got the job done in very slow time. She hasn't gotten that much better since then.
After failing to win her first 7 starts, trainer Val Brinkerhoff really managed Where's My Ring perfectly, deciding to ship her east and running her in this race, the Grade 3 Gazelle, where despite being a maiden, she went off the favorite against the likes of Jin Jin and regulatory risk, and she ran like the favorite, earning a 90 Buyer's speed figure. While she was a maiden on the way in, these connections have always treated her like a good horse. They'd run her in 3 graded stakes races, including the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies, and she ran quite well 2 starts back in the Grade 3 Santa Isabel. Distance seems to be her friend.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, this isn't the strongest Gazelle field that we're watching here win easily most recently, Danny. She got a perfect trip in that race, but still hard not to be impressed with the race that she ran, and she got a figure for it. The race 2 back against Kinza, she's just wide around the track and actually ran pretty well that day. And the race 3 back is that's the one that makes me feel like maybe they decided to get aggressive with her here, Dan, because she showed a ton. That was first time blinkers. Maybe that has something to do with it. She showed a ton of speed that day, though, and ran a really good race.
Trainer Chad Brown is one of the main contenders in Ways and Means. He'll also saddle the 4 Regulatory Risk. At first, Chad wasn't too keen, it seemed, on running in the Kentucky Oaks. He kind of had her in here because Ways and Means was on the bubble of the points list. And if Ways and Means didn't get in, well, Regulatory Risk would have done the running for the Klarovich connections. Instead, Ways and Means got in. Regulatory Risk, why not take a shot with her? She's only won once, though, however, Mike. That was a muddy track at Aqueduct, a maiden race. Her 2 subsequent starts, she was no match for Where's My Ring last time. Now the blinkers come off.
Yeah, right. And the only win that you're talking about there back in December, Dan, is a race where she just got loose on the lead. They didn't make her go fast. She's gotten a little bit better since then, and I'm happy to forgive the Busher 2 back. That was a super wet track, and maybe she didn't like it. She ran fine in the Gazelle last time, but she was absolutely no match for Where's the Ring. And Where's the Ring isn't really the horse to beat in here. I just feel like she might be in over her head.
I think Torpedo Anna is a horse that either is going to end up being the wise girl horse in this race or is going to be a forgotten player and might make people pay at the right price. She's done nothing wrong from 4 lifetime starts. She's won at Churchill Downs, and she returned off the layoff in the Fantasy like she could be a real player in this division. Let's watch this performance from Torpedo Anna, who broke from the far outside post in post 10, showed wonderful tactical speed to get into the race, and once she gets in front, she's, again, as I said to Nicole Russo earlier this week, exuding confidence in the stretch.
Yeah, really, really impressive performance here, and just ridden with a ton of confidence too by Brian Hernandez. He just sat on the outside like he knew that he was going to win this race with this filly, and then she delivered for him in the stretch. I mean, she just absolutely crushed that field. Her first 2 starts last year were really impressive, and I just felt like she had an excuse in the Goldenrod the first time and only time that she lost so far. She really redeemed herself last time. She's a super dangerous player in this race.
So lightly raced, still has upside potential. Churchill Downs is her home base, and the tactical speed to adapt to any sort of race flow. Lots to like with Torpedo Anna off that 91 Beyer effort. Lemon Muffin is up next for Mr. Lucas. This horse was a maiden winner in a graded stakes race earlier this year, taking the Honeybee at 28-1 odds. She then ran back in the Fantasy and didn't run to that performance. So she still has to prove the Honeybee wasn't a fluke.
Yeah, she really does. I mean, her upbeat was actually good too. I mean, she actually looked good winning that race. She won really easily, even though she was a really big price that day. But when they moved her up into a tougher race last time, I mean, it really looked like that was just way too tough for her. And now they're moving her up again. She's a huge price for a great trainer. If you like her, you know, take a shot at some kind of big price, but she'd be a big surprise in here.
The number 7, Fiona's Magic, upset one of the favorites in this race, Leslie's Rose, 2 starts back, going a 1-turn mile in the Grade 2 Devona Dale. When taking that field gate to wire, they tried her longer last time out. Her first time going 2 turns in the Gulfstream Oaks. She got hooked up in an early pace battle with Into Champagne, and she really paid the price. She's got speed. I'm really worried about this longer distance.
Yeah, me too. And she just that was a fast pace last time, and she really couldn't cope with it, Dan. It doesn't feel like she'll get off that much easier against a way better field here. Listen, there's really no upside in knocking horses who are going to be really big prices, and she's going to be a really big price in here, but I just don't see how she can possibly win this race.
Won't be surprised if Tarifa goes off the favorite. She's the morning line chalk, and she really just ticks a lot of boxes. She really dominated the Fairgrounds Road to the Kentucky Oaks this year. 3 consecutive wins, 2 of the graded variety, with fast races as well. Top Connections, Brad Cox. You've got that beautiful Godolphin pedigree and the tactical speed to work out her own trip. Her last race, she sat just off the leader. It's one of the horses on the also eligible list, Our Pretty Woman. That horse made this one fight to the wire. I thought it was a good last prep for Tarifa, Mike. She really had to work and earn it. She should be ready.
Yeah, another forward move last time, which is a good sign. And I do think that she beat a really good horse there in Our Pretty Woman, who didn't make the field here. But that horse is all right. And Tarifa, good trip or not, she was dead game to close that horse down. Perfect trip when she won the Rachel Alexandra 2-back. But that was another move in the right direction for her. I mean, listen, I'm not going to knock her, Dan, but I do feel like this is by far the toughest race that she's ever been in. And she's the morning line favorite in here. She might not go favorite in here, but she might. She's going to be one of the favorites. I just feel like this is a way tougher race, and I don't think I'd be willing to settle for one of the shorter prices on her.
The 9 Everland would be a great story. Claimed for $30,000 4 starts back. She's won 2 of 3 starts for her new connections, including a stakes race at Turfway Park over the synthetic surface. That was the Bourbonnette Oaks, where she took advantage of a fast pace and ran them down late. She's likely going to get another solid pace to attack here. The question is, will she be as effective on dirt as she's been on the all-weather? You look at this female family, this is all grass.
Yeah, it really is. Listen, it's she's a really tough read in this race, if only because the surface switch is obviously the biggest issue. She's also way up in class for this. I know that she had a setup last time though in that Bourbonnette Oaks. I thought she ran really well in there. Briefly blocked there when that field came into the stretch, but she waited. She got the room. She came on through, and I really liked the late finish that she had.
Into Champagne's the number 10, and you and I were both impressed with her first 2 starts, including a victory off of a lengthy layoff in the Glitter Woman over a sloppy track. And I think we were a little bit disappointed she didn't catch Fiona's magic. 2 starts back in the Devona Dale. I'm willing to forgive the Gulfstream Park Oaks her first race around 2 turns because she did get caught up in a pace battle, finished best of the pace horses. But when you look at the Gulfstream Park Oaks, Ways and Means had so much trouble in that race that would you rather take her?
Yeah, probably. And as I say that, Dan, I don't mind the plan there from Julian Leparoux to go to the lead with her first time around 2 turns because she was drawn towards the inside and she caught a good break and she just went with it. And it briefly looked like it was going to work. But then Ways and Means just got a little bit ranked, came after her. All that stuff sort of worked against into Champagne, and she wasn't good enough to deal with it. I would like you, though, just too disappointed in the Devona Dale 2-back. You got to win that race for me to want to like you in a race like the Oaks, which is just way, way tougher.
I wonder if the 11 Ways and Means has the most long-term potential of any of these 3-year-old fillies. She was one of the most impressive debut winners at the Saratoga meet last year, earning a 90 Beyer speed figure, winning off by the length of the stretch. And then she ran an okay second in the spinaway in her second lifetime start when she did not have a very easy trip. Now, unfortunately, she came out of the spinaway with a pretty serious injury. Chad was sort of behind schedule a little bit, but he ran her in the Gulfstream Park Oaks, and it was a race where little trouble going into the first turn, pulled very hard and rushed to go after the leaders, had the lead in the stretch, and just got tired, all off of a lengthy layoff. She's got a lot of talent.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think too many people would argue with you that hard, Dan, if you just said she's the most talented filly in the race, because it really feels like that could be the case. All of her races really have something to offer, even though she's only 1 for 3. I don't love that she's very lightly raced here. I don't like that she's only got 1 start this year, and it was a race where first time around 2 turns where she couldn't hold on, even though there are plenty of excuses to go around there. And she's not going to be a great price in this race. Is she the most talented horse? She might be. Can she win here? She absolutely can win here if she gets the right kind of trip. I don't think I'd be willing to settle for her as one of the favorites or possibly the favorite in this race.
Power Squeeze is the number 12, and she continues, I believe, to be underrated. Despite having won 4 consecutive races, 3 stakes, beating 3 of these, including Ways and Means last time out in the Gulfstream Park Oaks. Let's take a look at Power Squeeze. Ways and Means has already commenced her early move to the lead. Power Squeeze settled just off of the pace here, was not shell-shocked when Ways and Means made an early move. It was a really nice, patient ride for Daniel Centeno, and he comes with Power Squeeze and just wears Ways and Means down late. She's underrated. She's fast enough to win this race based on that 92 Beyer from last time. And isn't she going to be a price again?
Yeah, she is. And that's how I prefer to look at her too, Dan, because I feel like, listen, you go back and you watch the full replay of that Gulfstream Oaks last time, and you'll say, Power Squeeze ran fine in there, but she took advantage. She got everything fell right into her lap there. She was in a perfect spot all the way around the track, and she got the job done. Other horses weren't as lucky, and I don't want her back in this race, which is fine because it might be the right way to look at her. But I just appreciate that she's always in that position. Every one of her races, she's in that position. The race 2 back in the Suncoast, it didn't come back fast. She just had a perfect trip. The rail opened up for her. She came right on through, and she won easily. I like all of her races. She's not fast enough to win here, but that's going to lead to her being a good price again. And she always shows up.
The 13 is just FYI, last year's 2-year-old filly champion and winner of the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies. And I think it's amazing that after 4 starts, she hasn't been favored in any one of them, and she's not the morning line favorite in this race. After winning the Breeders' Cup and getting the winner off, she missed a little bit of time. So Bill Mott had to scramble to find one prep, and he got it in the Ashland last time out. And all things considered, she caught a sharp horse, Leslie's Rose, that had a perfect trip. I think for a prep. It's exactly what Mott and company wanted.
I'm going to look at it the same exact way. She actually ran really well in the Ashland. I think the other takeaway from the Ashland too, Dan, is that I think you're right. The proper way to look at it is to say they were probably using that to get here, but she also took a pretty big forward move off of really good 2-year-old form. I mean, she improves to an 89 buyer. They obviously weren't aggressive with her early in that race. They were happy to take back and just make a run around the turn. And then she finished in that race to get up for second. That was a really good performance. And you know what? She moves forward again in this race, she's going to be a handful.
Now, the horse that beat Just FYI is Leslie's Rose, and we're going to take a look at the Ashland where she got the measure of last year's 2-year-old filly champ. Leslie's Rose got a perfect trip this day. She sat an inside pocket trip, angled to the outside, got the jump on Just FYI, and is just the best over this shortened stretch at 1 1/16 at Keeneland. She really needed to run this race, Mike, because her first 2 races were pretty impressive, and then she was just bad in the Devona Dale. There were a lot of question marks coming into the Ashland. Could she sit off of a horse and win? Could she sit behind horses and win? She passed all of those tests. I'm sure Todd Pletcher or Rad Ortiz devastated by this post position because there's just no chance she can work out a trip like she did in the Ashland in this race, and it's going to be hard to carry ground against a field this good.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's really the main issue because you're right that her first 2 starts were really good, and they sort of pointed her out as one of the best fillies in this crop. I thought she had excuses in the Devona Dale 2 back. How much of an excuse you want to give her, I guess, is up to you. I thought she had a legit one that day, and then she obviously rebounded last time, but she rebounded with a perfect trip at almost 10-1. I don't know. She'll be half that price, maybe even less than that in the Kentucky Oaks. So she has to do it a totally different way from a tough outside post against way better horses. I mean, it's a situation where you're not going to be shocked when she wins because she might be one of the better 3-year-old fillies around. But, how short a price do you really want to take on her now against a tougher field from post 14?
Now we have to quickly touch upon the also eligibles because both of them have quality. Of the 2, I do prefer the 15, Our Pretty Woman, who I do believe, even though she hasn't won a stakes race, is one of the best 3-year-old fillies in this crop. That's how good her first 2 races, both on wet tracks, were, and she made Tarifa fight the entire length of the stretch in the Fairgrounds Oaks.
Yeah, agreed. Listen, if Candy gets in, she could easily win this race too. She would need a trip, and the far outside post wouldn't help her. But she's good enough to win here. I'm with you though on Our Pretty Woman before the race was drawn, and you just saw all the horses pointing for the race. I was very interested, and I was hoping that she would get into this race at a price so I could take a shot with her.
She would certainly bring speed to the party under Joel Rosario. Candied in here for Luis Saez, Grade 1 winner of the Alcibiades. She'll get the right pace setup if she runs in here. She's still a little bit green, Mike, in learning.
Yeah, it still doesn't change leads in the stretcher. Ashland, though, it is the second time in a row where she didn't break great from the gate. So that's something that she has to clean up as time goes on. But man, she ran again through the stretch of that race. Another really good effort.
Before we take a look at our top selections, please click the subscribe button on the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel for the latest DRF videos. Exciting week, obviously, with the Oaks, the Derby, and all of the superstars on the undercard. Top pick time, wide open Kentucky Oaks, Mike. Where are you heading?
Yeah, I'm gonna take Just FYI, Dan. I really liked her return from the layoff in the Ashland, and I think that sets her up perfectly for this. I was kind of against 2 of the favorites in this race, Tarifa and Ways and Means. They're kind of 2 horses who I'm going to let beat me in here at short prices. But I like Just FYI, and I like Torpedo Ann. Those 2 horses are my 2 main ones in here.
I'm really interested in your second choice, especially Torpedo Anna, especially because she just might be ignored in the wagering. I don't know how they're going to bet this race. You can go so many different ways as to who the favorite will be. I've been impressed with Leslie's Rose's level of natural ability. We'll see if she can work out a trip. 4-1 is a little bit light for me. I need a little bit more at post time, but I think she'll give a good account of herself even with this lousy post. 13-5, 14-3 for Mike. 14-8, 12-15 for me in the Grade 1 Kentucky Oaks on Friday. Good luck.